Hi, everybody, and welcome to Dance Teacher Pep Talk. I am so glad that you are here listening to today's episode because it is one that, yes, is very near and dear to my heart, as are mostly all of the topics that I discuss here on the podcast. But it is one that I feel that is so very important and vital for us to include in our classrooms, regardless of what age dancers we teach. And in today's episode, I'm going to go into different ways that we can include this topic in our spaces, but it's one that I feel is not just a dance lesson, but a life lesson. So if you haven't guessed from the content I have shared in previous episodes, if you are a listener and you've been here before, you may notice that I love mindfulness. I feel that mindfulness in the dance classroom is so paramount to the success of our dancers as artists and human beings. And I have felt this way since I was young. But truly, I noticed in today's day and age that mindfulness is so much more important. And I'm going to get into that, into why and what I'm seeing. But today's episode, I'm going to share some different ways that we can promote mindfulness in our classroom. And if you're not sure what mindfulness is, stick around because we're going to get into that soon. But if you are aware of mindfulness, I also want to say, a lot of the time when we hear about mindfulness, we immediately may think meditation, emotional work, and things like that. But it doesn't have to be just that. There are so many ways that we can teach and encourage the importance of presence that doesn't have to do with a guided meditation or discussing how we are feeling. So if you're curious about mindfulness and you don't really want to get into the feeling side of things first, there are tips for you in this episode. So regardless of genre that you teach too, like if you teach ballet and you may think, where is mindfulness included within a ballet class? I'm going to share that today. So it doesn't matter what genre you teach, what age you teach. I feel this is such a valuable life skill or life thought process. So let's start off. What is mindfulness? So mindfulness is the awareness of the present moment. And, isn't that life? I mean, like when you think about that, the awareness of the present moment, you're living, that's your life at this moment in time. That is mindfulness. So often though, how much do you actually note or soak in that present moment? And so that thought right there is enough for me to realize why this is so important. Okay. And so for our dancers, I want to think about this too. So when we are not in the present moment, we can future trip and we can create worry in our systems when it comes to, what is going to happen, what will be. And, sometimes future tripping can be very positive, goal setting, dreaming, things like that. But when we are living in our dreams, we are not living in our reality. And, I do feel this is important to understand because a huge part of making our dreams come true is living as if our dreams are already here in our current reality and acting in that place. But sometimes if if we're thinking a lot about what's to come, especially for a lot of our students, they might be thinking about that test that they have tomorrow at school. They might be thinking about a trip that they're taking and needing to pack certain items for, things like that. So if they're in the classroom and they're thinking about what's coming tomorrow, they are not thinking about the material that you are bringing forward to them. Now, the opposite of this, when we're not in the present, we can dwell in the past or think on things that have happened. And this can cause stress, anxiety, because we're living in moments that have already happened. And, we might be even playing out scenarios of what could have been. But those moments have already happened. And how does that matter in your current situation? That is what is important now. So there's where that mindfulness component comes in. So having looked at these two ideas, can you see now why mindfulness might be valuable for the youth that we work with today? And, I've said this before, but I don't want my dancers to graduate or move on with only the dance skills that I've taught them. So for me, mindfulness is a tool that I can help encourage for them that they can take with them anywhere in life. And I feel like it is not only a valuable lesson and a valuable skill, but it's one that we can really easily work into our classroom outlines. So that is why I feel that it is so important. And I mentioned too, how important it is in today's day and age. And when I say that, like, that makes me feel old, but honestly, like, I'm not old or anything like that. But like, I don't know, that phrase, it just seems dated. But when I think about today's day and age, okay, we are so often on our phones. And so are our dancers. We spend so much time, like, really think about this. We spend so much time living in others' realities and in others' present moments that we are not even in our own. So I want you to try, you can try this for a moment sometime, because if you have to you might have to pause the podcast to do this, or you can do it afterwards, but open Instagram or Facebook and set a timer, even like maybe 5 minutes, and just scroll. And when the timer rings, ask yourself, did the time go by fast or did it go by slow? Did you become absorbed in someone else's stories? Did you forget about your own life? And how is your body feeling right now? How are you feeling? Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Did you miss important cues in your own body because you were living in your phone? These to me are huge wake-up calls for the needs of mindfulness. And the reason I share this is because I notice it in my own self. So if this is happening for me and I am aware, what is this doing for our dancers? Especially when it comes to those that are at impressionable ages who spend time also comparing others' lives to their own. And in the dance classroom, we're not on our phones, but we can be in our thoughts. So how can we help our dancers to get more mindfully present when in the classroom so that they do have the tools to be aware of how they can be in the reality of their own life while in the studio, and also the awareness for when they leave the studio and are back on their phones? So this, over the past couple of years, really had me thinking, how could I incorporate this into my classroom? And so I workshopped it, and the concept sort of became this mindfulness contemporary is what I was calling it. And I do this class from time to time with my students. I don't do it every week, but when I do, I see great benefit. And some of the exercises, like I said, you could take this, even though I call it mindfulness contemporary, you could see it across multiple genres. The reason why I chose contemporary as the classroom that I was bringing it into is because when you think about the definition of contemporary, of the current time, of the current era, of this time, that's what contemporary means. And so for me, mindfulness just seemed a natural fit for that, because if we're using mindfulness to be aware of the present moment and contemporary as a style of the present moment, I just thought that it really blended so well together. So we're going to get into how I map out mindfulness in the classroom. And you could take one of these ideas to throw into your class for the week. You could take all of them. But however it is that you want to incorporate these exercises, I really don't think that there's a wrong way of doing it. But number one, the first and most important part in order for this to work out, in order for this to set up correctly, is we need to get into the body and out of our heads. Okay. So when a dancer is in class, and even think about your own self for a second here. When you're taking a class, how many times have you been at the bar doing an exercise and your mind might start to drift? Or you're in the center doing the jazz warm-ups and you're starting to think about something completely unrelated to what you're doing. Or you're waiting your turn to go across the floor and you're thinking about the homework that you have for the rest of the night, or, whatever it is. These things are the realities of these students, okay? How many of these students maybe got a bad text message before they walked in the door, or a Snapchat from a friend that put them into a feeling that they couldn't shake? And even though the phone is outside in the hallway with their things, they're in the dance classroom now, and they cannot be in the dance classroom. They cannot be in their bodies because they're in their thoughts. So the number one, none of the rest of these exercises are going to work unless you get into the body and out of the head. So some ways that I love to do this, I think the Franklin method warm-up is so incredibly useful. Any neurological feedback type of exercises where you're actually touching your body, feeling the body that you are about to move, is so helpful. Sponging, tapping, brushing, shaking, I think they're all great ideas to feel your body, feel the sensation of your body. Growing up, my modern teacher, she had the first exercise that we did in our class was a shake combination. And so, kudos to Jenny, remember, Nano on that. But you would shake shake to warm up, and it really helped to like let loose a lot of that tension. And another option would be foam rolling out the feet for ballet. So again, if you're like, how can we do this for ballet? We'll maybe start out with rolling out the feet. Little kids, young children, how can we do this for young children? Start off with head, shoulders, knees, and toes, or some type of activity like that where they're, acknowledging their body parts and they're feeling that their body, their tool is here with them to help them dance and to help them move. So that is number one. If you do not get into the body and out of the head, nothing else is going to work. So for this type of mindfulness class. So making sure that we start off with that. So now the second part of this that I was going to get into is choreographed warm-ups. So the pro to a choreographed warm-up, if you are, say you have a center warm-up for jazz, for modern, contemporary, tap, whatever it is, the positive of this is the consistency, right? So like we're building on these skills, we're continuing them week to week, we're growing with them, we're learning with them. The con to this is that we can become in our memory with it. So the body does it without thought. And when the body does it without thought, we're not really present. Okay. So how to change this up? How can you get the body and the mind to be present week after week after week with a choreographed warm-up? And so what I like to do with this is take that warm-up and face a different direction one day. Okay. Switch the order that you do the warm-up in as well, as long as it like matches safely. Like you don't want to like mishmash the warm up and then not have it like flow in a safe manner for effectiveness. So, thinking about that. But one easy way to do it is just let's face a different way. This is not the front anymore. We're going to change a direction. It gets them to think about where they are and to change, like I said, something about that consistent warm up. Another thing that you can do too with warm-ups is just have a framework for a warm-up and change it up from time to time. And I think with the choreographed warm-ups also, like if you're not wanting to switch it around or change things, you could also ask questions, different questions each week, whether you're asking for a real vocal answer or an answer in the students' heads, and make sure you clarify that, ahead of time. But asking questions while you're going through the warm-up so that they can check in with their body. So maybe like as we're going through it, encourage them to think about how is this movement feeling right now? What muscles do we feel activating? What in our body do we feel relaxing? Things like that can help us to remain present with the movement that we're doing. A third idea for mindfulness in the classroom is using different improv prompts. Improv truly is so amazing. Like, I don't really think you can go wrong like with mindfulness and improv because improv, you're doing it right on the spot. You're flowing with your creativity right then and there with whatever music is given or whatever prompt is given. I find improv can be like a movement meditation. And so that's great if you can incorporate that. Younger children, freeze dance, any other, styles of dance, if we're calling it freestyle or whatnot. But I do feel it's really helpful. So now the fourth tip, when you're doing combination and skills, whether it's adagio, progressions, anything like that, give the exercise. Okay. Make sure that the students really are feeling that they're knowing it. We're working hard with it. And it could be a really basic adagio or exercise to begin with. And then this is where the mindfulness is thrown in, being aware in the present moment. Okay. Taking that work, taking that choreography, taking that skill and giving challenges that change it up and make them think. So, for example, like I mentioned in the warm up, use a different wall as your front. Taking the movement and adapting it to floor work. That can be very challenging. Definitely one for more of your advanced dancers, but seeing how that goes. Taking the exercise and dancing it towards and for each other. So like with this, you're all moving together at the same time, but you are performing to another person who is also dancing and performing. Not mirror image, because you would keep, your right side and your left side the same, but you're having this almost like communication together with the movement that you're doing. And you could also break it up. Another challenge for this that would be really cool is, say there's so many different phrases one count of 8, two count of 8, whatever. And you could label them as A, B, A, B, A, B. Students in the A group are doing the A phrases, maybe like 1, 3, 5 of, counts of 8. So like the first count of 8, the third count of 8, the fifth count of 8. And then the B group is doing the second count of 8, the fourth count of 8, so really like breaking down the material in different ways that's going to challenge them more. So that's more so like if you're having like a longer combination or, more phrases involved in that specifically in center. Another thing too that you could do in combination or skills is beginning the combination on a different count in the music than you naturally would. So maybe instead of starting on the 1, you're starting on the 3. Maybe instead of starting on, the 5, you wait till the 7 or whatnot. So like using different counts in the music too, to like change it up, challenge the mind, and so that they're really having to be present in order to pick up on this. All right, let me see. Number 5, another tip I have, and this is actually, I think, maybe one of the last tips. So this is like general throughout the class. So another thing for mindfulness is when you're correcting, try not to always give the answer in a mindfulness class. So, of course, we want to guide them as their teachers to how they are supposed to fix something. Because like I've mentioned in other episodes, like one of my pet peeves is don't give a correction without helping the student get to that place. So the thing with mindfulness though, is if we give the answer all the time, we are not developing that critical thinking skill. So yes, we want to guide them to these places, but I like to stop the music and let's talk about this. Let's discuss this. Let's, brainstorm off of one another so that we are all, being aware of how to get this corrected together. So let's take an example here. So say there is disconnect and a passe alignment for jazz pirouette. Okay, so we have some kind of funky alignment thing going on. If we are wanting, the shoulders over the pelvis, what do we need to activate to get there? If we are wanting the heel lifted higher for our turns, what do we need to engage to get there? Discuss this. Get them involved in the thought process of it all. And like I said, it does not need to be like this every class, but I do feel once in a while it helps to be really, it helps them to be really present in the movement that they're doing versus us just giving them the answer of how to do it. So if we're like noticing in their transition steps that they're not stretching fully through their feet or they're not like articulating their feet through the floor, we're not just going to say, stretch your feet, lengthen your ankle bone through the tips of your toes, or anything like that. We are going to have them think about what they are doing and how they are going to fix that. So being aware of that and you're correcting. And lastly, of course, meditation and reflection is a beautiful way to start and finish the class, and really talking about mindfulness and why it's important, having the students understand and feel the importance of it as well. But I really wanted to think outside of that, outside of meditation, outside of reflection for this particular class, because I can incorporate that easily within any class, starting it off, finishing it, thoughts in the beginning, thoughts at the end. How are you feeling? How are you feeling now? Things like that. You can do that with any class at any time, but these tips I feel like just go into different ideas for that. How to be present. It's about also keeping the students on the edge of their seat in a way, or that feeling of I don't know what's going to come next, but having to be ready for it. We cannot zone out in this class. We need to be focused. We need to be ready. We need to be aware, and we need to take in and appreciate this present moment. I always tell my dancers too, this class, there's never going to be this class again. Because next week, even though it's still this class style, it's going to be totally different. Even if the exercises are the same, we are never going to have the same class twice, because our bodies are going to be different week to week. Our minds are going to be different week to week. Our feelings are going to be different week to week. And so being aware is, also allowing us to not take for granted the beauty of the class experience that we're having. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's tips on how you can bring more mindfulness into your space for your students, because I feel the benefit far reaches beyond the time that they have in the dance studio. So thank you all so much for your support and listens. Please make sure to follow my Instagram at Dance Teacher Pep Talk, where I include resources and other important information. And each week I'm trying to make the resource that I am putting out also mirror the podcast episode that I am launching that week. And so if you haven't checked out Tuesday, I launched a resource about mindfulness and different little ways that you can include. And some of those ways are not even in today's episode. So make sure you check that out. If you are enjoying the podcast and you want to reach out, DM me over on Instagram. I love hearing from you, and I love understanding too, like what topics that you want to hear about. How can I best support you? How can the podcast best support you in your class with the experiences that you're having? I'm hoping to open up interview episodes again soon. It's just a little hectic with life right now. But if you feel like you have something that you want to bring to the podcast that you want to share, I would love to begin thinking on that again and looking for educators who really align with the notion of positive working environment, and the topics that I love to share and speak on. So if that is you and you're interested, please reach out at Dance Teacher Pep Talk. But again, I want to thank you all so much for your support and listens. If this episode really called to you deeply and you feel that a friend or colleague might benefit from it as well, make sure to send it along. But I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week ahead, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.